We will switch subjects live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Daugherty, R. Wayne Steiger, not your normal Sunday show. So glad for you to be here. For those of you that don't know, I'm a former 20-year preacher, a Bible college graduate, over 100,000 hours of study in the Bible. R. Wayne Steiger, very similar background in addition to being a former CEO and entrepreneur extraordinaire. And we just come on here and share some of our thoughts, share some of our ruminations, and try to maybe give you some perspectives that you might not have considered. What did I leave out, Wayne?
I don't know. The moon is setting.
Yeah. What does that mean, the moon is setting?
You know, it's very interesting because while I was making my tea, I turned all the lights out, and the moon is almost setting directly in the west. In fact, a little north of west. And it's bright. And I thought the same thing you did. I said, wow, I'm going to talk about I watched the moon set, because I was up at about 4:30, and it's just extraordinarily bright. I mean, you go for a walk, you don't need a flashlight, you don't need anything. I was making mental notes to talk to us because there were shadows, just like if you had the sun. I could see the clouds. The clouds were really luminescent. Very interesting, Jeff, very interesting.
So the moon was casting shadows, and you saw the clouds and everything. And what do you take from that? Is there something that's bouncing around in your head?
Well,
Wayne, are you going to talk about a moon simulator?
No. I was actually thinking of Cat Stevens. I'm being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow. Anyway, the point is that light. We have this celestial satellite that emanates light from the big light. And so the thought occurred to me, technically speaking, in one sense of the word, you could say if there's a full moon in wintertime, like it is, this one was really weird. The next one will be 2094. When the same full moon at the winter solstice. And there was two other things that made this one very unusual. But my point was, you could say that you walk in 24-hour light.
And what would you say to people like Nigel in the chat room that says the moon has its own light?
Yeah, I think everyone's entitled to an opinion. I mean, there's strange things about that satellite up there. Hollow, it's littered with H3, that's helium-3, which is very odd. It's a very rare substance that the moon is covered with it, and you convert that into rocket fuel. Imagine that. So, yeah. But anyway, it was just odd, Jeff. It was just, if anyone has never walked, and of course it was like 17 degrees out this morning, but that gives you a little perk in your step.
It does. It does. Wayne, somebody said something to me yesterday, and I'm trying to remember exactly who it was. Oh, it was my son-in-law. And he works with the military a lot. He has to get into a lot of bases, and he has to talk with a lot of military people. And he made a very, very interesting statement to me. He said, because he knows what I do. He says, I know that a lot of people like you are worried about government conspiracies and the government controlling, every bit of our lives and knowing and seeing everything. He said, you were in the military. Think back how that worked. I work with the military now, and they can't even check me into a base properly. How are they going to be able to do all the stuff that we think they do? And I remember being in the Air Force, Wayne, for 6 years, and it is not exactly a model of peak efficiency. And there's a reason why the old joke is that military intelligence is an oxymoron. Do you think we sometimes worry too much?
Well, I don't know about worry too much, maybe focused in the wrong direction.
Elucidate, please.
I say if you look at where data is now as a weapon, data now can be used on a personalized basis to destroy a person. And now data can actually be manufactured.
That was just in my head. I mean, if they literally wanted to destroy you or I. It would be very, very simple, very, very easy, and they would produce information that even the people that know us best would say, oh man, that's real, and it not even close to real.
Yeah. So I say there's an enemy. I just don't think it's the military. Yeah.
And I would tend to agree with that. I mean, let me just say the military is not exactly the perfect model of efficiency.
Yeah. I have a lot of subscribers that are cops, and they write me emails, and, I'm more concerned about what they're seeing. They said that people have changed. It's much more dangerous now, way more dangerous.
Now, Wayne, let me play. Is that really true, or is that just what people in law enforcement want us to believe to gain sympathy and funding?
No, my uncle died in the line of service. He was a St. Louis County cop. I've had family members that have been in law enforcement all of my life, and there is a notable change. When a cop gets out now to do a traffic stop, where it used to be, even in a suburb, it was a casual conversation, ma'am, sir, you went past the stop sign, whatever. The dialogue was more civil, more of, all right, I broke the law. Now, as one cop wrote me, he said, it's life and death when you get out and do a traffic stop.
So is that the reason why, and I know I'll say it before people in the chat room do, is that the reason why it seems like the majority of cops are absolute jerks now?
Well, the anger is one cop from Las Vegas wrote me. He said, the anger, it's at an intensity now. Polarization. I don't see cops as being bad. They have a tough job. We pay them to, number one, enforce the law, but you got lawmakers that make crazy laws.
That's true.
And so cops, unfortunately, get the brunt end of that. They're not the ones making the laws. If people get pissed off because a cop is enforcing the law, well, then vote out the congressman that's been in there and going to retire nicely on your back.
Right.
Right.
I wonder what some of your police friends would say to the statement that, at least in my perception, it seems like it used to be protect and serve was the attitude of most police officers. To me now, it seems like the dominant attitude is not protect and serve anymore, but intimidate and control.
I'll say this, and this is just me. This is not representing any law enforcement officer or personnel. There is something happening to civilian law enforcement, and it's becoming more federalized.
Interesting.
That's all I'll say to that.
Interesting.
And if you don't know what federalization of civil law enforcement is, then you need to start doing some more of your civics work.
You do. Someone says in the chat room now, it's your papers, please. And that could be best said probably in a German.
Hey, Lisa, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. You try to get through an airport without papers.
The last time I dealt with a law enforcement officer was the same thing.
Yeah, papers.
Just coming up to me very mad, very aggressive. Give me your ID.
Yeah. And you've got this whole
there fast. I knew I was about to get tased or shot before it was over.
You got these people that are called sovereign rights people, and it's changing, Jeff. It's sad. It's sad.
So Wayne, is it a good idea when the officer says, show me your ID, that you remind them of your rights and say, why do you want to see it? Or should you just hand it to them?
I figure there's a fine line between a hero and a fool. And so choose which side of the line you want to go. Listen, this is the way I look at it. The Supreme Court has ruled that under the Constitution, you, as a citizen of the United States, you have a legal obligation upon request of a law enforcement officer that you have to identify yourself. It's just that simple. And people want to get all wrapped around the, saying, well, I don't have to do that. Yes, you do. It's part of being a citizen. There are obligations to citizens' rights. And that's why we have law enforcement officers. Why do we have police? Well, because if we didn't have police, there would be total anarchy no matter what your position are. Now, are there cops out there that should have gone through better psychological profile testing? Yeah, but you know what? It's also a damn hard job. It's low pay, and that's why I tell people, if you see an officer or a couple of them in a restaurant, buy their meal. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. There may come a time when your life is in jeopardy where you want that officer there. So,
well, here's Florida's stop and frisk law. And Florida's stop and frisk law says that it permits a law enforcement officer to stop and temporarily detain a person and request ID if that officer has a reasonable suspicion that a person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. If you say, isn't it a violation of my civil rights for the police to detain me without probable cause? Unfortunately, the answer is no. And if you do walk away, you could be subject to lawful arrest for resisting arrest.
Yeah. So for litterians, if you don't like that, talk to your legislator. Mm-hmm. Talk to your local legislator that you voted in there. They can easily, within one session, turn the manipulation. You see, the problem I have with that law, because that law is pretty much replicated through the other 49 states, is the fact that it has a lot of ambiguity. Yeah, if the officer thinks, well, that's subject to, and every defense attorney will tell you, that's why most cases are thrown out of court. Because if an officer thinks you're about to commit a crime, that officer is not witnessing a crime. What that officer is testifying to is a thought crime. And you will get off virtually every time when you present that to the district attorney and say, well, then we're going to challenge this officer on his thought perception. And officers don't want to do that. Cops don't want to do that. Hell, they got, regs that continue to just, here's the problem, citizen, is the fact that we elect new legislators every year or every 2 years. And what they do is they add more laws to already existing laws. I say, let's change the Constitution. Before you can pass a law, you have to revoke 3 laws that are on the books.
Didn't Trump propose that?
I think he did. Yeah. He got laughed right out of the house.
He did that. That was during the campaign he did that.
Yeah, because it only makes sense. Yeah. It's gotten to the point that I look at like
regulations. For any new government regulation, they have to get rid of a government, at least one other government regulation.
Yeah, and then that regulation, legally speaking, legalese, how they speak it, regulation is not a law.
Right.
But it has as much effect as a law.
But Wayne, it just reminds me of your papers, please.
Exactly. My God, do you know what they're doing in Atlanta right now? And the selective airlines are doing this. Delta, United is now getting involved, and I'm sure American is right behind. But Delta was the first. All you folks that fly out of Hartsfield, you know what I'm talking about. So Delta now, full bio facial scan technology.
Wow.
No more people.
Wow. And Wayne, I lived in Germany for 3 years. And I remember walking down the street, and even today, when the Polizei, they're called, when they walk down the street, it's like the parting of the Red Sea. Yeah. There is no attitude towards the Polizei in Germany, I guarantee you.
It's the saddest thing of 9/11 is the fact that we've lost our rights. We live under illusion that we have rights, but the fact that you can be detained. What most people never talk about is this thing called the, the National Defense Authorization Act. And in that act that the Senate has to renew every year, every January, is a provision that we can be arrested for no cause at all and held indefinitely.
Oh, under the Patriot Act, that's exactly. Yeah. And like Lisa C says, and we begged for it. And as I go back to 9/11, I wasn't the guy that I am today. And I remember 9/11. I remember the Patriot Act, and I was all for it, Wayne. If it had been on the ballot, I would have voted for it. I was 100% for the Patriot Act, and look what we did to ourselves.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Look what we did to ourselves. And I want to ask you a question, and I wonder about this myself. When I'm not making a podcast, I sit around and think about these things. Would we really have anarchy if we didn't have police, or are we capable of governing ourselves? I just don't know if I buy that we've got to have government, we got to have police, we got to have military. Tell me where I'm wrong, Wayne.
I think it goes back to the time of how you look how societies manage themselves. So what you're talking about is self-policing. The West was like that.
Like Power Vapor Supply says, you can still buy an AR-15 for $500.
Yeah. I contend that every state should have open carry. That's a form of civilian policing.
They didn't have any school shootings in Tombstone, Arizona, Wayne.
You got that right. Listen, it is a known fact, and I challenge anyone who wants to challenge me on what I'm about to say. In those jurisdictions where open carry is allowed, crime is dramatically reduced. Because when the bad guys realize that the good guys got just as much heavy armor as they do, they're not going to be so apt to show their ass. You know why? Because they're going to get a cap put into it.
Absolutely.
My wife is a far better shot than I am. I pity the poor fool that ever crossed that woman.
I mean, it just makes plain sense to me. If I'm a person that is really upset at society, really upset at my job or whatever, it's one thing for me to get a weapon and a couple hundred rounds of ammunition and walk into a place that I know is a no-gun zone. I know there's a heavy gun control area. And it's a completely different thing for me to walk into a place in an open carry, full Second Amendment state.
Look at Israel. Look at Israel.
Yeah,
Israel. Citizen.
When's the last time you heard of a school shooting in Israel?
They don't have them there. You know why?
They have them.
Because at the age of, I think it's at the age, and someone can correct me, but I believe it's at the age of 15, 16, you're required to carry a full auto assault rifle.
You're required to carry it.
Yeah, it's by law. And you're right. You don't see school shootings. The muggings are way down in Israel. Like, give me your stuff. Well, my stuff's bigger than your stuff.
Exactly.
But that's just the indoctrination Americans are. You know, listen, you talk to the Venezuelans. You talk to them right now. In fact, I read a story on this last week. They are bemoaning the day they allowed their guns to be taken away.
Who is?
Venezuelans.
Venezuelans? Oh, I'll bet they are.
Yeah. You know, it's so bad down there. It's the way the U.S. media works is that, let me tell you what, it is a catastrophe. It is almost genocide what's taking place in Venezuela.
Somebody makes a good point, Wayne. Just look at Chicago, probably one of the most gun-free cities in the country.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, folks? You know, Chicago is the example of complete, I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
A wise man once said, even a fool knows when to shut up.
If socialism and liberalism worked, then Chicago would be a utopia.
It would be.
And it's not.
I had to go there, man, I guess 6 years ago. I had to do a radio interview on WGN. And so I had to stay right there on the Miracle Mile. And I got to tell you what, I never left the hotel. The station was literally 3 blocks away. It's, let me just tell you, my spidey senses were going off. You know what I'm saying?
If somebody mentions Chicago's the Windy City, a lot of information. A lot of information blowing out of Chicago.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of a foul wind, I would suggest.
Yeah. There was the day.
The football team was good this year. And then Nick says he was born in Baltimore. There's another nice example.
Yeah.
DC, another nice example. All these gun-free places that are almost like war zones, almost.
I think, listen, we're just used to statistics. Well, today, in Chicago, another 3 people were shot and killed. And, you're drinking and you're eating your burger going, what did he say? We don't even pay attention to it. I'm going to do a story here after the first of the year getting into this whole thing about the increasing numbers of missing people and, more importantly, missing adolescents.
Yes. The number is conservatively, once you back it all down and pull everything out, the number conservatively, Wayne, is about 800,000 kids a year.
Do you know what I found about adolescent blood? Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Did you know what I read about adolescent blood?
What'd you read about adolescent blood?
Well, adolescence is they're not quite us.
Right.
It's a really interesting thing that's going on. I mean, hormonal.
Oh, yeah.
Proteins. All sorts of interesting things going on there.
And here's something very interesting. My silly mummy says it's so different in England. We don't carry guns and there's barely any shootings. That's true. And the first thing that pops into my mind is, have they been doing it to you for so long that you've simply surrendered? Or does gun control work outside of the United States, Wayne?
I don't know. I guess it's culturally. See, I would love to live in a reality where there were no weapons at all.
That'd be great.
It would be great. But you see, we have to be so careful in YouTube. You can't really express what you really want to say. I had a video that was barred from any advertising because the content was considered to be too serious of a nature for the general public.
Yeah, that's true. But there's a reason why, after being proclaimed Chancellor for life, that one of Herr Hitler's first acts was to disarm the public.
Yeah. You see, I contend this, a well-armed public is one that will keep the government in check. And you can say—
quoting Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, I am.
The government's worst fear is a well-armed populace.
Yep. There was in a previous administration—
Independence, by the way.
Yes, sir, it is. And people ought to read where he came up with that. He knew from— and I'll say this to our friends in Great Britain, no disrespect, but they knew from the monarchy that if it was ever allowed into the United States, that system of law, that we would be just nothing more than a puppet.
Wayne, can we turn our adolescence back on?
That is— folks, do some research in this area. And you talk about that number. There is virtually— it's insane, Jeff. Law enforcement doesn't care. It's not a question. It's like it goes into this black hole. Oh, how old was the kid? 13. Okay. Yeah. And then nothing more is ever done, and nothing more is ever followed up.
I mean, it has to be because the people that write their checks and make their rules and give them their regulations are saying they can't follow up on it, and they have to be not following up on it for a reason. What is being done with these children? I guarantee you they're not being sent to summer camps.
I don't know where they're going, but, I could say that, all right, let's say kids run away. I mean, kids run away. That's what they do. But they just never run away to nowhere.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really odd. And, and the numbers are increasing. The number of adults that are turning up missing. It's weird.
Oh, and you know what? I'm reading the great new book by David Icke, and there's a lot of data to point to the fact, there's a lot of data to suggest that places like child services are become very involved in missing children. Children go into the system and disappear.
Yeah. Now, I was a child that was in the system. I was a ward of the state, lived in state homes and foster homes. And I don't remember any of the kids that I ever was in. I was in a county home called Burnett Balin. It was amazing to me to see how many kids were coming through that system. I mean,
did you see them come and go a lot, Wayne?
And I was where the abused kids were at.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
And, I'll say this, for society, back then, it was in Cottage 5. Cottage 5 is where the babies were put. And I can still remember several children that had come in with cigarette burns on them.
Oh, that's terrible.
Now, what person does that? Yeah. So, I think about these things a lot. And child advocacy, there's an organization that hunts for missing and exploited children. And they'll tell you that this is an increasing problem. And in some countries, it's so bad. And I think that this is what I didn't realize. There's a trade in this of where children are just thrown away. And I wonder if the Archon mentality is this what they want globally. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting into areas that we shouldn't get into.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, as David Icke says, are being used, and we'll just keep it as light as we can, as nondescript as we can, in abusive ritualistic practices.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of them show up again. Some of this 800,000 shows up again, but they show up different because they have been turned into shells, and they have now what are they called? They're not called fronts. It's another word. False personalities that they've been programmed with, or they've got them embedded, and it just takes a signal to turn them back on.
Yeah.
I don't remember the word for that, but
it's like the Manchurian Candidate.
Exactly like the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah. It's like, okay. Well, it just shows that we're changing, Jeff. The whole world is changing. I read, it disturbs me when I read things like, for instance, China. China has these camps. They call them training camps, retraining camps.
Right.
But
Coming soon to a former Walmart near you, Wayne.
Yeah, and I'm going, oh man, now what? You've got these biometric things now where we're entering into where it's going to become everywhere you go.
Altars, that's the word. Thank you, Tracy.
Altars, there you. And my deep concern is that machines make mistakes. And if we're getting into a place now where the cameras are being installed, everywhere you go is going to be a biometric database following you, that's a prisoner.
It is.
Is it not?
But could the argument be made, Wayne, that yes, while machines do make mistakes, on average, statistically, they make far fewer mistakes than humans?
Now I'm confused because it sounds like we're talking something sentient.
Oh, that's true.
Because I'm going, well, yes, humans do make mistakes, and we're known for that. Even our God makes mistakes.
That makes the point that I'm always making, and I kind of get the sideways glances and the pats on the head. Okay, Jeff, saying things like, but when our vibration is high, we mess up the electronics. They're trying to copy what we already have, and we can stay impervious to it. I know a lot of people roll their eyes at me, but I think it's true.
Yeah, but that takes a lot of discipline and a lot of concentration.
It definitely does.
It's like having to manually keep the light switch on.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, because eventually your finger is going to weigh like a ton.
Well, perfect practice makes perfect, Wayne.
It does. Perfect is that ever elusive concept of what we always are redefining. And then once we reach there, we find out we have to redefine it.
Wayne, you're probably the only guy that I know that's one of the only guys I know that may be as conservative as me and be as and yet I think you have more objectivity than I do. Let me ask you a question that's been asked of me a couple times in the past few weeks. You know what we think about sexuality and frequency and vibration and energetic emanation. Is there such a thing as consenting individuals engaging in erotic activities outside of a long-term exclusive relationship that is not energetically disadvantageous?
A lot of energy being expunged and exchanged. There's no doubt about that. And that's the question.
And right on cue, Rocker Chick says, I miss the 80s.
Actually, the 70s were pretty cool as well. Yeah. I often think about that. I grew up pretty promiscuous by, conservative definitions, Judeo-Christian standards. It was always the forbidden fruit, right? But there was a certain insight I had, though, back then, there was this vibration. I mean, it's kind of what the whole psychedelic thing was.
I'll bet.
Yeah, we were all vibrating when we would go out and do
good vibes, man.
Good vibes. There you go. That's where it goes back. And when we would do our vision quest, with peyote, it was very understood what vibrations were. Then I guess we kind of lost it. We got into the flesh. And I say that because I don't have any objections on sex. People can do what they want. And in fact, I think it's one of the great things about being in the flesh is that we have this thing called sex. But the thing, and it's like I always say, you always know you're in for a take when they say but, because how many T's are putting there? But anyway, it expends a lot of energy. And I have learned at where I'm at now in life, if I could have just extracted some of that energy back and channeled it more into what I now know is that source, I may have thought twice about it.
You may not have been as promiscuous as you were. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. There was an experiment that we did. It was back in 1971. And it was an alternative to sex. And actually, it was pretty cool, where everyone would get in a circle. And what you would do is that you would begin to find a person and you would begin to transmit just the energy of the palm to the palm and meditate on that. And it was as close as a pretty interesting sexual experience.
In Star Trek, the Vulcans have the thing where the man and woman just touch like this.
Call them a jar. Yeah.
That wasn't colon R. That was just how they always, instead of holding hands or putting their arms around each other, that's just what they did.
Yeah. And there's a truth to that, Jeff.
That doesn't sound like near as much fun, Wayne.
Well,
and I had a person ask me this as well. I was having a debate with them about, that they were sort of advocating freedom of sexual expression between consenting individuals. And I was saying, yeah, but it's very easy to get some bad juju from somebody that way. And they're like, oh no, I transmute it before it even comes to me.
Oh, well, I just saw Lisa C say something, if I had only been wiser, it's like the group Faces. If I'd only knew then what I know now, ooh la la. But, I think along that path, there was some energy that I got exchanged with that took a long time to shake off.
Do you think you could have transmuted it at the point of transference?
Oh, yeah. Well, everyone knows that intensity of that millisecond of climatic, when it comes all together, it's still
in the pre-climactic incident moment too.
Yeah. In fact, it's like being sucked into a vortex. To be pulled out of that moment makes you very angry, doesn't it?
Wayne, do you think there might be a little bit of energy
I think
at disposal at that moment?
I think there's universes being created.
Do you think there might be a way to leverage and harness that?
I absolutely do.
Yeah, but we can't talk about those kind of things.
Well, listen, that video I got, How Big is the Rip? The thing that was based on was that when they exploded the first atomic bomb in a populated area, the contention is that what we didn't realize and what the public never figured out was that we were opening rips in the space-time continuum where those bombs at that center point were going off, the focal point. And what they found in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was that when they found people embedded, their essence embedded into the inert objects. Our scientists in the military, they didn't expect that. How does organic flesh become incinerated at that point to leave essence of itself into inert objects? And they contend the belief system is those people never died, and that death from that point forward, Jeff, has been altered. We don't die like the people did 100 years or so ago. The moment we exploded those first bombs, that the whole foundation of where we go to in the afterlife changed. And what they realized is that it's called spectral energy transference.
That's amazing. I'm sorry, Wayne, you're being all serious. I can't the chat room aren't being so serious.
So anyway, that is it's this whole thing we talk about being in a soul trap.
Yeah.
That if you can harness the energy of one living spirit, it's infinite energy. It never stops.
So are you advancing the idea that the nuclear weapon was created to harness human energy?
I don't think initially, no. I think it was a causality effect that they weren't expecting.
Interesting.
Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Gary says the best way to get your girlfriend to stop having sex is to marry her.
Gary.
That's not going to help.
Man, that ain't going to help at all, dude.
It is not going to help, brother.
You know, that's the whole question. Do spirits have sex?
And Wayne, is there such a thing as recreational sex that's not damaging?
The Sumerians thought so. They didn't find it to be this. Listen, I wrote this to an individual. He was writing about the concept of God. And I said, here's our problem. In the West, if you were raised up in the West, your whole matrix, your whole construct of God is based on a Judeo-Christian concept.
Yes, it is. And that concept is not designed with your benefit in mind, ladies and gentlemen.
No, it's not. I think that there is a certain way to channel that energy because we are a sexual species.
Or are we an animal? Which one is it?
Boy. All right. So
It's a fine line, isn't it?
Actually, this will be a story I'm going to do, but my wife, who's a nurse, is helping me on this. And so the thing that I don't understand is how humans and reptilians have virtually the same heart.
And Wayne, it's further than that. I've talked about this on Coast to Coast AM, which will be on Christmas night, by the way.
Yeah, great to see you back on there.
Our hair, our teeth, our eyes, our skin, and those are just the ones I can remember. Those are all reptilian.
The base of our brains.
Well, right. You know, the reptilian cortex, that goes without saying, but just things that we don't think about.
Yeah.
Our hair, our eyes, our skin, our teeth. That's all reptilian.
1 out of 1,000 humans are born with a tail.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Hello. In fact,
did you know George Costanza was born with a tail?
I didn't know that.
He was.
Do you know how many people have to have surgery to remove the nodule at the end of their tailbones?
Lots of them. That's what I mean by a tail.
Yeah.
Lots of them.
Lots of them. Our fingers, our toes, so much are reptilian I ask, sir, are we not reptilian?
Well, we're definitely a reptilian
Or did
mammalian.
we have sex with a reptilian species?
Oh, that's a thorny proposition.
Oh, I think there was a garden store. Oh, Jeff, that was classic.
Could we have sex with a reptilian population? Well, if let's just extrapolate. If we're dominantly human, minoritively reptilian, and they're dominant reptilian, minority human, it's possible. But do you remember the old that movie with James Caan? I think it was called Enemy Mine, where they had the alien team, and they were cops together, going back to the cops thing.
Yep, I remember that.
It might be a little bit different because I remember James Caan kicked one of the reptilians between the legs, and he didn't get the expected response. And his buddy told him, "No, you got to hit him under the arm if you want to get that response." So it would be a little different.
There is so much evidence that.
And Steve says our bodies have been corrupted by reptilian DNA. Have they really been corrupted, or is that just who we are?
We take the position that we're the top. We're the chosen species.
Where do you think we're at the top of the evolutionary scale?
It may be that we're actually the bottom, and our masters are seeing how this experiment's going to work out.
Well, if you think you're at the top, I challenge you to jump into the ocean and tell that to the great white shark.
Hey, there's things down there I don't even know about. I don't like the ocean.
A different perspective on your supremacy on the top of being the apex predator.
I like terra firma, but it's,
Oh, Steve Conover says, are we having reptilian sex unless we're married and exclusive?
I don't know. I don't know. It's the fact that if we have these genetic markers, you can't. What's going on?
Anya says she's seen a lizard eat another lizard. I don't know if sex with him is a good idea.
You know what? When you said that this triggered, Lynn and I were talking. So in the last couple of months, I continue to see these stories pop up of more and more people being arrested for cannibalism. I've read several stories of where both male or female fed their former partner to their guest and the different forms of culinary delight.
I've read that too.
Yeah, and what is going on? What?
Lizard Man, I love your quote, but I need to see some data on it. Lizard Man, who I'm assuming is a man, maybe he's a lizard, says 7% of the population in the United States hardly drinks any water because they're reptilian.
I don't know. I mean,
show me some data. Don says Eve did the snake. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know a lot of people think that.
Well, I think the problem that I have is that if you look at the homogeneous line, starting back from Homo articulatus, Homo erectus, all the way up to Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yep.
There has been an evolutionary marker all the way through. I don't know, Jeff. I still get this idea that someone is still in the kitchen. We're an experiment. Huh?
Still cooking us up, huh?
I do believe that. And I think that here's my deep concern.
Statement. Lots of TV shows being made about cannibalism now. Are we being desensitized?
Ooh.
You know what's next, Wayne?
Soylent Green.
People. That shows we're old.
But I want the Soylent Red. It's got a more robust, But I don't know.
But I mean, think about it. If all beings are sentient beings, if all beings are truly life, is there really any? Is it not morally equivalent to eat a person as it is to eat a cow?
I kind of took it from the cow's point of view. Like, oh crap. It's Yeah, it's really gets to messing with you.
It really does get to messing with you.
And so why does the Chinese, why are they hell-bent in wanting to identify the soul?
I didn't know they were, Wayne.
Yeah, I got two stories. They have invented a new MRI machine that is 10,000 times stronger than the one you and I or other people go in to get, pictures. They figure that if they continue to amplify this thing, they're going to be able to identify the very essence of what makes us us.
I
Why?
wonder if they'll be able to locate it, but I wonder if they would ever be able to identify it, even if they located it.
I had a friend who I've been writing to. He says the number one thing, the Holy Grail, is to break that code, that whatever happens at the moment of death. That's the Holy Grail.
Committed a typo, Wayne. She says that she wants to go on a full pant diet. I don't think that's what she meant to say.
What does a full pant diet mean? I like that.
I'm not sure that's what she meant to say.
I think maybe plant.
I think so.
Hey, listen, Doc Ram doesn't wear pants. These very smart people don't wear pants, so I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. But why is it? I mean, that is the Holy Grail. They want to know that very moment and capture it. I never realized
purposes.
You see, Jeff, you think there's an afterlife, right?
Pant lives matter, says fact.
Pant lives, I love it. So you believe there's an afterlife, right?
I think that's even the wrong question. I think that the question isn't, is there a life after this? The question is, what the hell is this that we're messing with right now?
I think it's death.
This right here that we're in?
I believe that that's what we're immersed into, is this realm of death, and that transition point is birth.
Well, certainly the fear and guilt control matrix, the dominant paradigm, wants us to be completely submerged in death. Why are all their rituals death, sacrifice, eat my blood, eat my flesh, drink my blood, sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice? Why do we have this orgiastic war going continually? There's always been war since about 2,000 years ago. Interesting, pre-2,000 years ago, not so much war. 2,000 years ago today, war, 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 war. Maybe it's time for them to give a war and nobody come, Wayne.
I'll be the first to ignore the invite.
We are in a place of death. There's no doubt about it. And Interestingly enough, as we circle back, the French call the orgasm the little death.
You see, I think we've been taught wrong. I really do.
The way out of this.
If this is, all right, if there is something else after this, if there is something that's consciously, that ties me back to this memory,
right,
then that's what I think we all hope for. But I contend that we are spirit beings. I feel I am a spirit being. I am a spirit. Now, I may possess a soul. Huh?
La petite mort.
Yes. So that, when I meditated on it this week, this epiphany went off. What you're talking about is eternal energy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if there is a second death in the next realm. I don't know. I don't know if this energy can ever be consumed. If we are part of the divine, this is what I was on this amazing meditation journey, and it was this, what I was seeing. If we are truly part of the divine never ends and it never had a beginning.
Ooh, good one, Wayne.
And that means we don't either, Jeff.
Oh, we don't.
I cried because to me there is such hope in the fact that if we go by the first and second laws of thermodynamics, that energy is neither created nor destroyed, but is in a constant state of transmutation,
right,
then that means our whole essence is in this journey of transmutation.
Indeed.
And that is the message of hope that I'm sharing with my family, my friends this season. It's not about a make-believe baby. It's not a make-believe rape scene. It's not about all the other things about this supposed pagan holiday. What we really do have hope in is the fact that if we are sparks of the divine, the journey never ends.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, Jeff.
It doesn't. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
And that just excites me to no end. And, as bad as it is, there is tremendous hope in all of this.
I agree.
It's, and I know it's crazy. It's really crazy, but Jeff, there's
the concept of death is Uncle Yahweh's trap.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it make perfect sense for everybody? We want to live forever. We don't want to get out of this. We want to stay here. We want to stay here. And wouldn't it would be so for them to want us to fight to stay in death instead of escape to life would make perfect sense in this upside down world. David Icke says it's an inverse world that we live in. So whatever we think is real probably isn't. And it's interesting that even Seinfeld talked about the opposite world.
Yeah. Jeff, it doesn't make sense. If there is this thing called God, this creator, it would never be a creator of death. It couldn't be. Because if death existed in it, then it couldn't exist.
Right.
So
Silly Mommy says, I believe Jesus to be an alien since my teens. Why can't people see it? Well, interestingly enough, Silly Mommy, on Christmas night on Coast to Coast AM, they've invited me on to talk about just that.
I think the word's getting out. What was the story this week? There are now 1.5 million witches in the United States. The number is growing.
I saw that,
yeah. So
I think they're kind of bastardizing witches a little bit with that too.
I think they are too. I mean, it was kind of like
they're nailing both people. Let's get those Christians, but let's take a shot at the witches too.
Yeah, as a backhanded compliment. Oh, how you doing? You're going, what the hell was that?
I mean, if nothing else, Wayne, and I'll say this to George, if nothing else, Jesus himself said, I am not of this world. If you're not of this world, by very definition, that makes you an extraterrestrial.
It does. And if people would read the Gnostics, I love with the fact that in the Gospel of Mary, and it's in the Gospel of Philip as well, I think, the Christ said, there's no sin.
Yeah.
None. I confounded a person with that question, by the way, Jeff. In fact, I think I may have fractured his faith, but came and
he needed it.
Said, talk to me about the whole need.
You'd be ashamed to break his arm to reset it if it was growing badly, would you?
Well, I would do it in a second.
Absolutely. Well, that's an interesting analogy.
The fact that I said, well, so which genius of man sinned? The look on his face, you ever get that look when you see people when they're just completely confounded? They're going,
you kind of get that look like from a dog.
Yeah. What? That's what my dog does. And he literally walked away.
He was on overload.
He walked away. I guess I never thought about it. I mean, I'd have loved to have met me 20 years ago. May have set me free sooner.
Did the smoke start coming out of his ears?
It was, seriously, I think something broke.
Wow.
I guess we never thought about who was Adam.
Well, this is interesting. Lisa C., and I don't know how she knows this, but she says that she shares the same birthday with Glinda the Good Witch.
Really?
Yeah.
I had a crush on Glinda the Good Witch as a kid.
Who didn't, Wayne?
Thank you. It wasn't Dorothy. I don't know, man.
I think I had a crush on both of them. Does that make me wrong?
No, it doesn't. But now that you're saying it, now I think I know why, because I think Marilyn Monroe had that same personification as Glinda the Witch.
She kind of did, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a huge crush on Marilyn Monroe. Anyway.
Marilyn Monroe. Do you know what Marilyn Monroe's maiden name was?
Billie Jean.
Norma Jean.
Norma Jean.
Darty.
Darty.
Yeah.
Wow. Is she a kin?
She must be.
Somewhere down that family tree. Wow. How about that?
How about that?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm hearing Elton John, Candle in the Wind in my head,
Yeah. But Wayne, I've got to tell you, sometimes I do get a little bit, sometimes I don't know if worried's the right word, but sometimes I wonder if I didn't used to be really, really bad, or if I wasn't supposed to be really, really bad here and somehow got out of it, because the people that I've met a lot of bad people, Wayne. Mm-hmm. All these cabal people, I've shaken their hands and spent time with them, and it makes me wonder, am I just extraordinarily lucky, or what the hell?
I think just me, but I think when we emerge on the other side, I think we're going to be shown, many of us have been marked.
Because I met Reagan, both the Bushes, both the Clintons, McCain, Trump, Jesse Jackson.
Obama?
No, I didn't ever met Obama. If I didn't met Obama, I'd really be worried. Anyway.
Well, you find out, I was really surprised when it was leaked out that who was really leaking all the stuff in the media. John McCain.
Well, John McCain's been a songbird his whole life. That's all he did was.
I thought, what a schmutz.
And now that you hate to speak ill of the dead, but I really don't, not him.
No.
He did, he was a farce and a liar and a traitor from the beginning.
Just so sad, man. It just that's why we have to find this enclave, this community we're building that we're immersed into.
Oh, and I hope to tell this to David Icke to his face. I think I'm going to get the chance. Somebody wrote to me and said, how can you trust David Icke? And I should call the name of the person that did it, but I'm not going to. So how can you trust David Icke? He says that the Queen is a reptilian. He claims to be exposing all this stuff, but he lives basically in this person said the same city. That's not quite true, but they live very close together. So how could he still be alive if he was telling the truth? Well, either A, he is part of the lie and the deception, or B, he might just be one of the most important people on the planet right now and is protected.
I'll say this. I'm pen pals with the Queen's sister.
Yeah.
Have been for years. And she has sent me some, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's more going on to this than, I don't think that most people, even us, as we begin to contemplate how deep this goes, I think it gets people so whacked out, Jeff. That's why they go back to their religion. It's easier.
I think David Icke is protected. I really do.
And I think there is such a thing as that.
And I think he'll be on this channel before my birthday. I'll just say it.
That would be excellent. That would be wonderful.
He did feature one of my videos on his website.
Cool.
Which was very nice of him.
That's cool. So, absolutely.
Oh, here we go. And speaking of, I just love this. Ike is a shill because he won't admit flat Earth. Oh, we have to have some comic relief. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, someone asked me, they said, well, what's your position on the flat Earth? And I said, well, I'm walking.
Exactly. Upright would have been my response.
That's all I really, we talked about earlier about when the first atomic weapons were being used. And I never connected things. I tell people I got a lot out of Christianity, got a lot out of that book. I don't recommend the book, but if you get into it, you have, anyway. So the firmament, imagine something as intense, more intense than the sun itself, exploding in the atmosphere. Would that not also have an impact on the firmament as described by the mystics?
Very well, maybe. But I mean, I don't see I'm not going to sit here and argue. It's a flat prison. It's a round prison. It's a square prison. It's a triangle prison. Can we just focus on it that it's a prison?
It's a prison.
And once we get out of it, we'll look back and say, you were right, I was wrong. Or you'll say, I was right, you were wrong. One or the other. But it is a prison. Let's focus on that.
Yeah, that works for me pretty well, too. And, half the challenge is getting out of the door. And when you realize there was no door.
There is no spoon, Neo.
There is no spoon, and it's so true. We live in a whacked out world. My contention is that this fractured time and space.
You know what? What if there is no Earth? It's neither round nor flat.
Yeah. What if we're nothing more than what I would call the neural pathway, a neuron of a huge intelligent being? I don't know.
Wayne, one thing I want to do a show on, and this has to be said, and I want people here to hear this. We are trapped in a simulation, but we ourselves are not simulations.
Maybe that is the paradox between prophecy and psychic ability. You see, if prophecy exists, and that means the future has been set in some form or fashion. And I say that psychics are more ability of picking up on what the future is.
Interesting. T. Love says, we are thought in God's mind. What if we are God's mind thinking?
Yeah. Again, I think that we've been limited by the word God.
I do too.
Go above
while
God.
you're here, please do subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you can get informed of more content like this. Please subscribe to Wayne's channel and also hit the like button if you would, please, while you're here. It only takes.
They have to make sure that they hit the notification. YouTube did the big purge last week. And it's a new program running on YouTube. So, folks.
Also, you have to resubscribe, or you have to read the bell?
Re-hit the bell because many people are not getting the notifications.
Ooh, Max Vision says, I'm not trapped. Max Vision, I don't feel like I'm trapped anymore either. I'm just hanging out here to try to help out for a while. I don't think I'm trapped, Wayne. I think I could leave whenever I want. And I think you can.
I think as well. I'm telling you, we're marked.
And for some reason, David says cuckoo ka-choo, so cuckoo ka-choo to you too.
Yeah, in fact, I'm hearing the White Album in my head. Who is the walrus going on here?
I never ever listened to the Beatles until I wrote that book about McCartney and Elvis. And
really?
I like McCartney. I really like Lennon, but I haven't really listened to too much Beatles.
I was at a place yesterday where I was listening to John Lennon's song "God." If you ever get a chance, listen to that song.
Interesting. And it looks like, Wayne, I'm going to get a chance to shake the hand of Sir Paul McCartney this spring.
Excellent.
That'll be awesome. There we go again, meeting all these.
But is it the true Paul McCartney?
That's what I want to look in his eyes and see.
Yeah. Is it the true? Did Paul really die? I don't know.
I don't think Paul died. I think Paul got really, really worked over by MK Ultra and Tavistock and temporal torture.
I saw Wings when they came through in, I think it was 70. When was it?
Oh, Wings, man.
When Linda was still with him. And holy crap.
I think the world would have had enough of silly love songs.
One thing I have to say, they put on a heck of a show. I still remember it. I mean, yeah, that was a great show. Yeah.
What's wrong with that, Wayne? I'd like to know.
There's not a thing. That's what I want to know. And that's what I loved about John Lennon, Song About God, And in the end, he said, what really matters is only believe in you.
Yeah. The song of Lennon's that really resonated with me was Watching the Wheel Go Round and Round.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I heard him saying, dude, I finally got off this wheel and now I'm watching it. And it's like, how did I ever fall for that for so long?
I think John was about to make the breakthrough. He had figured it out. He knew, I remember one interview he did with Dick Cavett, and he said, I could never get this whole deity thing with this Jesus thing. He says, yeah, I can see where people think, but he said, in the end, he says, it's really about the man. Yeah, it is about the
Did
man.
say that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in that very interview, he got a little ticked off because when they came back from break, they were playing one of McCartney's songs. Oh, I really appreciate you playing Paul's music for me. It's very nice. Cavitt's like, oh, well, you're welcome. And Cavett didn't get it. John's like saying, you dumbass.
You dumb shit. Jeff, I'll tell you, haven't we? This has been a life of a life. I tell there's nothing I'm going to miss about it. My love for my wife, I'll carry that through eternity.
Ooh, did that car crash, that purported car crash with McCartney, happen at a crossroads? Do you know?
I think it did.
Ooh, that's some powerful stuff right there.
Yeah, yeah.
I tell you what, this audience, man, there are sharp people in this audience.
And that was my point about having been marked. I think that many of us, we're going to find out we had a mission. Most of us, we've been waiting for this particular moment in time. And this is where it's being released. And I'm content that once the mission is accomplished, then we get our furlough papers.
Yeah. I think that, for if anyone's watching that has any connections, I think it's my belief, and I wrote a book about this, that Sir Paul was viciously and horrifically attacked and tortured, and that he didn't know about it for so long, and that Fall and Paul are the same guy, but he's been trying his best to make up for what the wrongs that he did because of that. And I think that I think it's not what we think it is, and I think that posthumously he will make sure the story's told.
I think so, yeah.
I really do.
I do.
So anyway, there you go.
What a year. So we're doing a show next. We had to do a year in a review.
Is this the last show for the year? Or is there another show? I'm pulling.
Let's do one. I don't know. Let's do next Sunday as a
kind of 30th.
Yeah, we'll just do a year in review.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of cool. Been a weird year. You've had some journeys this year.
Wow. Yeah. Have I ever?
As they would say, you've been up and down and all around the town.
Simultaneously many times.
Who was it I was talking to?
Oh, how about this, Wayne? What a way to end the show. There's a portal in orgasm to get out and to go up.
Wow. That is a good sex. I'd call it magic, but I call it also knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe
and going back to the Beatles.
Hey, all you need is love.
All you need is love.
I love the early ones,
Yeah.
If I promise to be
That's because it was all 432, Wayne. That's why you love the early ones.
Yeah, and I was at that perfect age. I was at 7 years old. I remember my mother listening to the Beatles.
Boy, there's a mouthful there, Wayne, but we won't even go there.
I know it. Actually, I remember at the drive-in, being in there with my mother and stepfather watching Hard Day's Night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, my friend, it has been fun.
It has been fun. And it's another Sunday has come and gone.
Had a great audience. Full room in here.
We always have a great audience. And it's interesting that, wow. And hopefully I will mention this channel so many times on Coast to Coast. One more time, George would get mad, and we'll grow it a little bit.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a lively discussion. Now, is George going to be the host?
George will be the host.
All right. You tell that rascal hello. Yeah, he's.
I of all the times I've been on Coast to Coast, I still have not been able to have a personal conversation with George. George is all business, as he should be.
Well, ask him about Laclede Productions.
I will. If I Laclede?
Laclede, yeah.
Laclede, okay.
He actually owned it. So.
Oh, so that would be very interesting to him. How do you spell that?
Laclede. Laclede.
Laclede Productions.
Mm-hmm. Post-production,
Right.
yeah. He's a good man.
My special personal thanks to Lisa Lyon for being such a great friend over the years, and to George Norrie as well, and the whole Coast to Coast AM family.
Yes. Good guy. You know, I remember, I'll tell you some stories other. He's a good dude. Yeah, always has been.
I like George. I really do.
He is a great guy. Well, Jeff,
all right, Wayne.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And thanks to all of you in the chat room. What a great morning. And I tell you what, it used to be, sometimes I remember it was all I could do to drag myself to Sunday and get a little bit of refreshment in church. But it was always gone by Monday or Tuesday night. I think this one can last people almost the whole week, Wayne.
I think they do. The comments are always lovely. And we got a great group. I mean, these people definitely enriched our lives.
No doubt about it. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to you, Wayne.
Thank you, my friend.
And we will see you again real soon.
All right. Bye-bye.